Good afternoon. The Supreme Court en banc, during its session on January 28, 2025, acted on this case. Aquilino Pimentel III, Bayan Muna Chairperson Nery Colmenares, and former Bayan Muna representatives Carlo Zarate and Ferdinand Gaite versus the Honorable Lucas L. Bersamin, the Honorable Benjamin E. Jokno, the Senate of the Philippines, and the House of Representatives. Petitioners challenged the validity of Republic Act Number 11954 or the Maharlika Investment Fund Act of 2023 and requested a temporary restraining order and/or writ of preliminary injunction. The Supreme Court impleaded the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Land Bank of the Philippines, and Development Bank of the Philippines as respondents in this case. The Supreme Court directed them to file the respective comments within a non-extendable period of 10 days from notice. The Supreme Court also set the oral arguments for this case on April 22, 2025, Tuesday, 2:00 p.m. at the en banc Session Hall, Supreme Court Baguio Compound, Baguio City. The preliminary conference will be on February 26, 2025, 2 p.m. at the en banc Session Hall, Supreme Court Main Building, Manila. Next, the Supreme Court en banc during its session today, February 18, 2025, acted on the following matters. In the case of Victor D. Rodriguez et al. Versus House of Representatives, Senate of the Philippines, and Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin. Victor D. Rodriguez and several others are challenging the constitutionality of Republic Act Number 12116 or the General Appropriations Act of Fiscal Year 2025 or the GAA. Petitioners argue that the GAA is unconstitutional for failing to allocate mandatory funding for PhilHealth, unlawfully increasing appropriations beyond the President's recommendations, and allocating the highest budget to infrastructure over education. They add that the GAA is unconstitutional since the bicameral committee report on the General Appropriations Bill contained blank items. The Supreme Court set the oral arguments for this case on April 1, 2025, Tuesday, 2:00 p.m. at the en banc Session Hall, Supreme Court Baguio Compound, Baguio City. The preliminary conference will be on February 28, 2025, 1:00 p.m. at the en banc Session Hall, Supreme Court Main Building, Manila. Next, in the case of Catalino Aldea Generillo Jr. versus Senate of the Philippines. Generillo Jr. filed a petition for mandamus asking the Supreme Court to direct the members of the Senate to immediately constitute themselves as an impeachment court to try the impeachment charges against Vice President Sara Duterte. The Supreme Court required the Senate to comment on the petition within a non-extendable period of 10 days from receipt of notice. In the case of members of the Right to Know, Right Now Coalition et al. Versus Commission on Elections and the joint venture of Miru Systems Company Limited, Integrated Computer Systems, St. Timothy Construction Corporation, and Centerpoint Solutions Technologies. Members of the Right to Know Right Now Coalition and several others filed a petition for certiorari against the COMELEC for its failure to act on their Freedom of Information request regarding the COMELEC contract for the lease of a full automation system with the Miru joint venture. Petitioners are also asking the Supreme Court to compel the Miru joint venture to disclose the said information. The Supreme Court required the COMELEC and the Miru joint venture to comment on the petition within a non-extendable period of 10 days from receipt of notice. In an administrative case, the Supreme Court dismissed Gerald Eric F. Sanchez, Clerk 3 of the Regional Trial Court of Cabuyao City, Laguna, for gross misconduct after he solicited 100,000 pesos from a litigant's mother in exchange for helping them find a lawyer. The Code of Conduct for Court Personnel prohibits court personnel from recommending private lawyers to litigants or anyone dealing with the judiciary. In another administrative case, the Supreme Court disbarred attorney Demosthenes S. Texon for gross misconduct and misappropriating his client's funds in violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility and Accountability. Attorney Texan had received from his client 134 million pesos in just compensation for an expropriation case, but only remitted 53 million pesos, keeping the rest as his attorney's fees and for the alleged senatorial campaign of former Justice Secretary Laila de Lima. A copy of the available pleadings may be downloaded from the public pleadings section of the Supreme Court website. Thank you.